In the beginning there was light, order, and divine harmony, but deep within the celestial realms, a shocking betrayal was brewing. A once glorious angel, bathed in the radiance of heaven, dared to defy the Almighty. What truly happened in the great war in heaven? Was Lucifer's rebellion merely an act of pride, or was there a secret plan hidden from mankind? Ancient scriptures tell of a war so fierce that the very foundations of heaven trembled. Angels clashed, powers collided, and eternity itself was shaken. But why did God allow this war? Why was Lucifer cast down instead of destroyed? What does this cosmic battle mean for us today? Prepare to witness the untold story, the hidden truths, and the shocking reality behind the war that changed everything. This is not just a tale of the past. It is a warning for the present and a prophecy for the future. Stay with us as we unveil the most dramatic, most chilling, and most important battle ever fought, the battle between heaven's mightiest warriors and the forces of darkness. The truth will leave you speechless. The great war in heaven was not merely a conflict of power, but a decisive moment in the divine order, a struggle between devotion and defiance, between humility and pride. It was a battle that echoed through the heavens, shaking the very foundation of the celestial realm. This was not a war fought with swords of steel, but with the will of the angels, a confrontation of faith and allegiance. At the heart of this battle was Lucifer, the once glorious morning star, whose rebellion against the Almighty became the first great schism in creation. Lucifer, radiant and mighty, was among the most exalted of the angels. Crafted by the hand of God himself, he was adorned with wisdom and beauty beyond measure. Scripture tells us in Ezekiel 28:17, "Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor." Yet in his grandeur, he harbored an insatiable thirst for self-exaltation. He was not content to serve. He longed to rule. He yearned to ascend above the throne of God, to place himself as sovereign over all creation. The prophet Isaiah records his fateful ambition in Isaiah 14:13-14. "You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." This desire did not arise overnight. It festered within him, growing like a shadow that stretched longer with each passing moment. In the courts of heaven, where the radiance of God's glory shone without end, where the chorus of angels lifted unceasing praise, where harmony and divine order reigned, a storm was brewing within the heart of the one who had been created to shine brightest among his kin. Lucifer, once known as the bearer of light, began to see the light not as a gift, but as a possession to be claimed, a force to be wielded for his own purposes. With cunning persuasion, Lucifer whispered his deceit into the hearts of many angels, promising them dominion and freedom if they would but turn away from their Creator. He sought to reshape the order of heaven, to establish a kingdom where he, not God, would reign supreme. At first, these whispers seemed like questions, innocent musings about the nature of divine authority. But they soon turned into something far more dangerous, a doctrine of rebellion, a call to rise against the one who had given them life. And so, a great number of angels, seduced by his words, chose rebellion over righteousness. These were not mere followers. They were warriors of light who had been entrusted with divine purpose, now cast into turmoil, now turned against their very essence. What followed was a celestial upheaval, a war unlike any other, as Michael, the archangel of divine justice, led the loyal hosts of heaven against those who had turned away. The clash was fierce, for these were not mere creatures of flesh and bone, but beings of immense power, forged in the presence of the Almighty. The heavens trembled as the forces of righteousness clashed with the legions of the fallen. Revelation 12:7-9 declares, "Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Imagine the scene. Blinding flashes of divine radiance colliding against shadows of defiance, voices of praise turned into cries of war. The once unified chorus of heaven now divided in a deafening struggle. The stars of the heavens bore witness to the first great battle of eternity, where the fate of the celestial order hung in the balance. Lightning split the firmament, and the ground of the heavenly realm trembled beneath the weight of combat. There was no fear in the hearts of those who fought for God, for their faith was their armor. And yet the battle was sorrowful, for they fought not against strangers, but against their own brethren, those who had once stood beside them in worship, those who had once been counted among the faithful. Lucifer, now cast down, was no longer the bearer of light, but the prince of darkness, the adversary of God and humanity alike. His rebellion was not merely a failed coup, it was the first and greatest act of defiance against the divine will. It was a lesson inscribed in the annals of eternity, a testament to the peril of pride and the unshakable triumph of God's sovereignty. Though he sought to claim a throne for himself, he was instead sentenced to exile, his name no longer spoken with reverence but with warning. Banished from heaven, Lucifer and his fallen host were cast down to the lower realms, stripped of their former glory. But his war did not end with his fall. No, he turned his gaze toward a new battlefield, Earth. Here, among God's most beloved creation, he would weave his deception once more. His bitterness, his vengeance, his unrelenting hatred for the Almighty found a new purpose: to corrupt, to destroy, to drag as many souls into his rebellion as possible. If he could not sit upon the throne of heaven, he would seek to build his own kingdom in the hearts of men. This war in heaven serves as more than a mere historical or theological account. It is a mirror reflecting the choices each soul must face. Will we remain steadfast in faith, or will we, like Lucifer, be lured by the whispers of pride and self-will? The battle that began in heaven continues in the hearts of men, for the same adversary who led angels astray seeks to deceive humanity. As the Apostle Peter warns in 1 Peter 5:8, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And so the battle rages on, not with swords of light clashing in the heavens, but within the depths of our souls. Every temptation, every whisper of doubt, every call to abandon righteousness for the allure of self-interest is a fragment of that ancient war. The echoes of that first rebellion still reverberate in our world today, in every act of defiance against truth, in every corruption of what is pure, in every rejection of divine love. Yet, there is hope, for just as Michael and the faithful angels stood firm in their devotion, so too can we stand against the darkness. We are not alone in this struggle. The same God who cast down the fallen ones offers his hand to us, calling us to stand in the light, to resist the enemy, to fight the good fight of faith. James 4:7 reminds us, "Submit yourselves, then, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Thus, the war in heaven was not the end, but the beginning of an ongoing spiritual struggle, a battle that calls each of us to choose whom we will serve. Heaven or rebellion, light or darkness, truth or deception, the choice remains ours, just as it was for the angels long ago. May we choose wisely, for eternity hangs in the balance. The war in heaven was not a physical battle like those waged on earth. It was a conflict of will, of divine authority, and of eternal purpose. The forces of light stood against the forces of rebellion, not with weapons forged of iron, but with the power of truth and unwavering devotion. Michael, the mighty archangel of God, led the celestial army in righteous defiance of Lucifer's insurrection. This was not merely a struggle between beings of great power. It was a defining moment in the spiritual order of creation, a clash between obedience and pride. Lucifer, once a being of radiant glory, had allowed arrogance to consume him. He sought a throne above the Most High, a place not rightfully his, Isaiah 14:12-15. The angels who remained loyal to God did not falter in their allegiance. They fought not for themselves, but for the eternal justice and holiness of the Almighty. The battle was fierce, but the decree of the Lord was unshakable. Truth cannot be overthrown, nor can the foundation of divine righteousness be shaken. And so, Lucifer and his followers were cast down, their rebellion crushed by the sovereign hand of God. Stripped of his former splendor, Lucifer fell, and with him, those who had been deceived by his lies. They plummeted from heaven, exiled from the presence of the Almighty, banished to a place of darkness and despair. No longer the bearer of light, he became Satan, the adversary, the prince of deception who would prowl the earth seeking to devour the souls of men. 1 Peter 5:8. The fallen angels, now demons, followed him in his mission to corrupt and destroy, their bitterness towards mankind unrelenting. They became tempters, accusers, sowers of discord among those whom God had created in his own image. Yet, despite their malice, they could not undo what was ordained. The sovereignty of God remained unchallenged, his dominion unshaken. The battle in heaven was over, but the war for the souls of mankind had only begun. With every temptation, with every whispered lie, Satan sought to lead humanity astray. But even in the face of such evil, God's love remained steadfast. He would not abandon his creation to the grasp of the enemy. Redemption was written into the very fabric of his plan, a promise that would one day be fulfilled through the sacrifice of Christ. The fall of Lucifer was not just an event in the celestial realm. It was a warning, a testament to the destructive power of pride and rebellion. The echoes of that ancient battle still resound, reminding all of the choice between light and darkness, between submission to God and defiance against him. The war in heaven set the stage for the ultimate triumph of good over evil, a victory assured by the unwavering power of the Almighty. But let us step into the very moment of battle, into the celestial realm where light clashed against darkness. Imagine the heavens trembling as Michael raised his voice, calling upon the legions of angels who had remained faithful. Their wings shimmered with divine radiance, their voices sang of righteousness, their very essence burning with loyalty to their Creator. Before them stood Lucifer, once an angel of splendor, now consumed by his own pride, his countenance twisted by the arrogance that led to his downfall. His followers, deceived and blinded by false promises, stood with him, believing in a kingdom that could never be. The clash was not of sword and shield, but of divine will. Michael did not waver, for he carried the command of the Most High. With a single decree, the battle commenced, a war that shook the very foundations of existence. The heavens thundered as light surged against darkness, and the angels who stood with God shone like the dawn, unyielding in their purpose. They moved as one, not out of hatred, but out of love, for the holiness of their Creator, for the order of heaven, for the purity of divine justice. Lucifer fought with all his might, his voice crying out in defiance, his power once great, but now tainted. He sought to overturn the will of the Almighty, to claim dominion where none was his to take. Yet no force could stand against the sovereignty of God. His pride had blinded him to the truth, that no created being could ever rise above the one who is eternal, the Alpha and the Omega. And so, the battle reached its climax. With a final act of divine authority, the decree was given, and Lucifer and his angels were cast out. The heavens opened, and down they fell, their cries lost in the abyss. No longer did they belong to the kingdom of light. No longer did they stand in the presence of the Almighty. They became wanderers in the void, spirits of malice and corruption, seeking vengeance upon the creation that still bore the image of God. As he fell, Lucifer became Satan, the accuser, the deceiver, the adversary of mankind. His hatred knew no bounds. He had lost his place in heaven, but he would not rest. He would turn his wrath upon humanity, seeking to pull them away from God as he himself had fallen. He would whisper lies into the hearts of men, tempt them with power, with riches, with false promises of fulfillment. He would twist truth into deceit, righteousness into self-righteousness, love into lust. He would make war against the children of God, knowing that he could never strike the Almighty himself. And yet, through it all, the love of God remained. Even as Satan waged his war upon the earth, the Father had already prepared a way for redemption. He had already planned a victory that would come not through battle, but through sacrifice. For though the war in heaven had ended, the battle for the hearts of mankind had only begun. This is the great struggle that continues to this day. The battle between light and darkness, between faith and doubt, between obedience and rebellion. Every soul is a battlefield, every heart a choice. And though Satan prowls like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, the promise of God stands firm. For the same God who cast down the deceiver is the one who lifts up the broken, who redeems the lost, who calls his children back into his embrace. The war was won in heaven, but the victory was sealed on the cross. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. This war serves as a solemn warning against pride and betrayal. It reveals the immutable truth that no power, no matter how great, can ever replace the sovereignty of God. Even the most exalted of beings, if they turn away from their Creator, are destined to fall. Heaven is a realm of absolute love and unwavering loyalty. It is a place where the divine order is upheld, and those who remain faithful dwell in eternal harmony. The rebellion that took place in the heavenly realm was not merely an act of defiance, but a disruption of the very essence of divine perfection. And though it was cast down, its echoes still resound through the ages, manifesting in the struggles we face in our world today. The battle did not end when Satan was expelled from heaven. It continues even now, unfolding upon the earth. The adversary seeks to lead humanity away from the presence of God, enticing them with lies and illusions. What began as a celestial rebellion has become a war for the souls of men and women, a conflict that affects every person who walks this earth. Satan remains relentless in his pursuit, using deception and temptation to ensnare the hearts of mankind. His whispers weave into the fabric of daily life, urging people to forsake righteousness for fleeting pleasures, to trade eternal joy for momentary gratification. The same arrogance that led to his fall is the arrogance he instills in those who reject divine truth. As the Apostle Peter warned, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. 1 Peter 5:8. The war in heaven is not a distant myth, nor is it confined to the past. It continues to shape the present, influencing decisions, testing faith, and challenging the devotion of all believers. Every person must make a choice, whether to stand in the light of God's truth or to be swallowed by the darkness of deception. The battle rages on, but victory belongs to those who cling to the Lord, for he has already overcome the world. John 16:33. As the echoes of the great war in heaven fade into eternity, its consequences continue to shape the spiritual battle we face today. The rebellion of Lucifer was not just a moment in the distant past. It was the beginning of an ongoing war between light and darkness, truth and deception, salvation and damnation. The fall of the morning star marked the rise of evil's relentless pursuit of power, and that war still rages in the hearts and souls of mankind. What can we learn from this ancient battle? It reveals the power of choice, the cost of pride, and the unwavering justice of God. Lucifer and his followers were not simply cast down as a punishment. They were separated from heaven because their hearts had turned away from the Creator. They desired power over purity, self-exaltation over submission, and chaos over divine order. Their fate was sealed not because God sought their destruction, but because their very nature had become corrupt beyond redemption. But what about us? Unlike the fallen angels, humanity has been given a choice, a chance to seek redemption, to turn away from darkness, and to embrace the light of God's love. Every day, we walk a path that leads either toward heaven or away from it. We are faced with temptations, distractions, and deceptions, carefully crafted by the same adversary who once dared to challenge the throne of God. The same voice that whispered lies into the ears of the angels still whispers to us today, disguising sin as freedom and rebellion as enlightenment. Yet, in the midst of this war, there is hope. The victory has already been won, not by angels nor by human strength, but by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. His blood was the final answer to the rebellion, the ultimate act of love that restored what had been broken. He did not come to condemn, but to save, to offer a path back to the Father for those willing to listen and believe. Think about this. If a third of heaven's angels, beings created in the presence of God's glory, could fall into deception, how much more vulnerable are we? How easily do we too mistake pride for strength, independence for wisdom, and desire for truth? The war in heaven serves as a warning, a reminder that even the most beautiful creations can fall if they turn away from their Creator. But just as heaven was not shaken by Lucifer's rebellion, God's plan for humanity remains unshaken. He has given us a way out, a way to overcome the enemy, a way to reclaim our place in His kingdom. The question is, will we choose it? Will we stand with the one who reigns in truth, or will we be deceived by the same lie that led to Lucifer's fall? The time is short, and the battle is real. We are not merely spectators in this war. We are warriors, called to fight, called to stand firm, called to shine light into the darkness. Every prayer, every act of faith, every moment of surrender to God's will is a victory against the enemy. So, as we close this chapter, let this truth burn in your heart. The great war in heaven was not the end. It was only the beginning. And now, the battle is ours to fight. The question remains, on which side will you stand?